Good morning, it's Wendy Johnstone here with Family Caregivers of British Columbia, and today we are live and we're going to be talking about a very timely topic, and that is respite and the differences between informal respite and formal respite. Before I begin, I do want to acknowledge that we at Family Caregivers BC, we've been thinking about everyone impacted by the floods, and if you or your loved ones have been affected, we hope that everyone is safe and you've been able to find the support that you've needed during what's been quite an incredible time. I know our family was only slightly impacted when my daughter was stuck in Vernon from a training camp. We were really able to mobilize pretty quickly and able to get them to a safe place, and they were able to fly back to the island. But I know for others it's been really quite devastating, and so just sending our good wishes and hope that everyone is safe and able to be back to a safe place. So today we're going to talk about respite. And I mentioned earlier that it's quite a timely topic for a couple of reasons. First off, I think as time marches on, with COVID, and even though things are opening up a bit, there's still many challenges. A lot of families sometimes, we're still a little more reluctant to fly, to travel. Our healthcare system seems to be, feeling the ongoing stress of the situation, and so we're hearing reports from family caregivers that it's been a lot more challenging to access types of care or access consistent care. And we're also approaching the holiday season and the winter season, and sometimes that also just brings additional challenges where there's a little more pressure on us, and we're also sometimes feeling the weight of that. And so respite becomes really quite critical for a caregiver's overall well-being, and also for the care recipient, too. They often benefit from respite as well. So today we just wanted to talk about some of the concepts of respite, and I think sometimes what happens is we can pigeonhole ourselves to think that respite can only be provided through a formal system or through formal activities. And so today we want to explore all of those. So I think to define respite is also really important, and respite is really about a period or rest or relief from the everyday challenges of providing care. And so it plays a role in helping family caregivers maintain their own health, to try and reduce stress levels and provide some relief. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, it can also be a really positive experience for the care recipient. And respite can either be short, it can be an hour increment, or 2 hours, or it can be days, or even longer periods of time. And it really depends on the care recipient needs. It really depends on your own needs as a family caregiver, as well as just what's available in your area and in your circle of support. And that's the broad definition, and really what it comes down to is respite is going to look very different for one caregiver to the next. But the critical running theme is that some form of respite is really important for all family caregivers in whatever shape and length of time they can find. I was thinking about some of the caregivers that we've been connecting with through our caregiver support line and through our coaching line, and I wanted to share an example of how some of the challenges of respite, and also how caregivers are trying to work through what they have at their fingertips. And so this is going to illustrate both the informal parts of respite and formal. So I have been working with a caregiver who is caring for her spouse, and her spouse has experienced a neurological event, and it's affected mobility, memory. However, her spouse is still quite functional. The challenges for her is that she's also caring for another family member with some mental health challenges, and although that's a bit more at a distance and a bit more control, it does weigh on her. And she is now feeling responsible for all of the household activities, managing finances, and providing, care and emotional support to her spouse. And she lives in a fairly remote area of BC, and access to services are limited. So we were having a conversation, and we've been, working through some various sessions. And when we first started the conversation, we talked about some of the challenges that she was having. And I thought what she brought forward were things that maybe I hadn't really thought about. And her first one is that putting respite into place is a lot of work up front. And so she acknowledged that it takes this incredible amount of energy to simply try and get it all organized. And so she acknowledged that as her number one challenge, that sometimes she didn't feel like she had enough energy to put it all into place. And so we started there, and we talked about what were the possibilities around respite. And she talked about, I asked about informal respite supports. And so we talked a bit about some of the options there. And one of the first places she started was simply to write down all of the possibilities of individuals in her circle of support. So those individuals that can provide either emotional support to her, that could provide doing tasks for them, that could actually connect with her spouse and provide some support there. So she started there, and through that process, she was able to come up with two specific actions. And one was a family friend who was retired, had a lot of time, to be able to devote to one day a week for 2 hours. And so they were able to set that up just as a first step. And then secondly, one of her really good friends just offered to say, listen, every Thursday, we're just going to make dinner and drop it off. And then it just gives you a break from some of those, household tasks. So that was just where she started. And, part of it was just this idea of thinking, identifying, and not trying to put everything into place at once. So she started there, and about 3 weeks later, she realized, okay, I feel like I have enough energy to do the next step. And the next step was actually to access some formal respite. And so when we think about formal respite, there's probably four main areas. The first one is sort of this idea of in-home respite, where typically it's access through home and community care or community health services, and it goes through a case manager. So in that case, the care recipient needs to be attached to the healthcare system, specifically to home and community care. The second one, which is a very common one that we hear about, is around the adult day respite centers. So adult day programs where individuals, the care recipients, are able to engage, it's usually a licensed facility, are able to engage in a day of activities and social connections, and it provides the caregiver with 3 or 4 hours of respite. And then there's longer stays, so whether it's facility care respite, where individuals can receive a longer chunk of time, and it's often 7 days or 8 days. And the last piece is sometimes in some health authorities there's this idea of this overnight respite care, or some private agencies offer this as well, where there's just a 24-hour respite care where the care recipient can go overnight. So those are more the formal respite cares, and I mean there's other formal respite care that's like paying for someone to come in and provide respite as well. Private pay, that's another, fits under that option. So going back to the caregiver that we'd connected with, should put into place these two informal supports, and then we started talking a bit about well, what are some of the formal, ways? And so for them, exploring what they had available in their community, they were able to access 1 day of respite per week. And it was for a 3-hour period. And then the next challenge for this caregiver was, well, what do I do in that time? Because I have to be out of the house. And so we talked about, a wide variety of aspects around, we focused on the practical aspects of caregiving, but then we also came back to, what brings you, what brings you joy, or what were previous parts of your life that you really enjoyed doing, or how do you process your emotions? And then we were able to build a bit of a menu. I know that sounds a little bit silly, but a bit like a menu of options. And so she has been able to implement from that menu of options. So she's not having to think as much, and she has kind of everything ready in a little spot for herself, so that when she has her 3-hour respite, that she can get up and go, and she knows that she has a number of things that she can tap into. And for caregivers, there's different ways around, how using respite. And for some, it is very practical. It's like, okay, I'm going to get some medical appointments done, or I'm going to get some errands and shopping. And it's really, I think really relative to where you're at as a caregiver. I think though, for some other caregivers, it's really nice to be able to either share their current caregiving situation with a trusted circle, or with a caregiver support group, or with a specific disease, specific group, whether it's Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, or stroke. Excuse me. And for others, it could be taking part in a journaling workshop, or an online journaling workshop, or even just journaling on their own. For others, it could be putting into some creative practices. So being able to even just do a bit of drawing, somewhere where that doesn't require a big studio setup, or writing, or being out in nature, whatever brings you joy in that time. So I think the other thing what I just wanted to finish up with was, for this caregiver, they talked about the challenge of just having the emotional energy to get started, to put into practice, because it was a lot of upfront work. I think for other caregivers, what we have heard is sometimes it feels, it almost feels like a failure that they're not able to provide care all the time. That somehow taking respite can be equated to not feeling capable. And I think, none of us can tell those individuals that they shouldn't feel that way. I think digging deeper into that and trying to understand what's behind some of those emotions. Is it guilt? Is there something else going on in terms of how how we identify it, as a caregiver and as our role? Because generally, what the evidence and the research tells us is that none of us really can caregive. One person can't do it all, and that in fact a team-based approach often provides the best results, both for the caregiver and the care recipient. But that's easier said than done, and so I think we want to acknowledge that sometimes accessing respite can be about not having enough resources, or just not having it not fitting. But it can also be because we have our own personal barriers, or our own thought processes around it that might make us more reluctant to access it. And so I think that's a really important piece to acknowledge as well. That respite doesn't mean that we're not good caregivers, or that we're not able to fulfill our roles. Quite the contrary. Accessing respite is a way to provide an opportunity for the care recipient to have a different experience, but also for the caregiver to be able to find small ways to refill their cup and recharge. So Family Caregivers BC, of course, we are always here on our phone line and by email, and we've got lots of great resources on our website, which I know are being listed in the comments below. We have a beautiful podcast that has come out around using writing for healing and self-care, which I think is really helpful for some caregivers. We've referenced a bit about creating a circle of care for caregivers, which is a really great blog. And we also have a webinar just around the importance of time for yourself. So encourage you to check out our education resources as well, and to connect with us through phone, through our caregiver support line, especially if you're feeling you want to talk a bit about how to overcome some of the challenges of trying to access respite and trying to work through that. We're always more than happy to provide support through our programs. So sending you some good positive energy this week, and it was so nice to have a little bit of sunshine these last 2 days. The rain has returned, and December we're going to continue this conversation, and we're going to talk about energy zappers, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all in a month's time. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.